So welcome, ladies. It's so good to have you all here online. Amazing, in fact, to have the Marion Burchall sharing her wisdom and experience with us on the power of design-led strategy today. It's just a great topic, and Marion and I have been talking about this topic for quite a long time. So we've managed to get this webinar into our busy calendars, and it's lovely to see so many amazing women here joining us online. For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Lyn Hawkins. I'm the National Director and the founder of Business Women Australia. I'm actually located in Budja in Perth, on the country of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. And I'd really like to acknowledge that this is sacred land in which we're all meeting from different places all around Australia. It's sovereign Indigenous lands. It's been lived, it's been danced and celebrated on for 60 to 120,000 continuous years. And I pay our respects to all Indigenous elders past, Indigenous elders present, and those who are emerging, and celebrate our Indigenous sisters in business all around the country. Really is a wonderful country, and we are very fortunate to have such a wonderful culture that's sort of really the foundation of our healing and our future. Business Women Australia has this incredible vision, and it's really a vision that's been pulled together from women collaborating and joining forces to think about how we can contribute to the greater good. And we're doing that by being a collaborative community. Everything that we do and everything that we deliver is coming from our members. We don't feature speakers from outside our community. We draw on the intelligence and the wisdom within our collaborative community. And part of that is around helping each other achieve our goals and dreams, sharing our knowledge and building this network of influence. People say, you know, who is Business Women Australia? Do you have to be you have your own business? No, we do have a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs in the group, but we have a lot of directors, executives, we have a lot of managers, we have employees that are aspiring leaders, a lot of consultants and professionals that have come out of corporate. Some of them have set up their own firms, and others have actually come on board through some of the key consulting groups. We've got women on boards. We've had some fantastic subjects recently that are very relevant to C-suite women and women on boards. And we also love doing the wine tasting and all the other things that we do socially in developing our friendships as well. But these are the 4 or the 5 pillars that we really build our program on, and it's focused very much on leadership, on leading self as much as leading others, on business improvement and knowledge, on our personal growth, influence and building our profiles, being seen and not being not keeping in the dark, really being able to step up and be visible, and of course connections. And around those kind of shared values. I wouldn't say necessarily that we are like-minded. We have some very strong debates, but we definitely have very strongly shared values that are really evident. I think it doesn't matter if you go into a courageous conversation in Inglewood, or if you're in the boardroom of Sydney, and mapping out strategies, or if you're online, it's these values that are very evident, I think, in the behaviour of our amazing community. So lots of things are in the calendar. If you're not already getting our e-news, please make sure you subscribe through our website. But we do have a calendar online on the website, so you can see whatever's going on there. And of course, if you follow us on any of our social media, you'll see all the different things that we are doing. So a lot of what we're about is the professional development that goes with being better leaders, being better managers, and being better team players. And disc flow accreditation is something that we've joined forces with the wonderful Jessica Schubert, who's got the license to actually distribute this in Australia. And we have a bit of an incentive there for us to upskill if you're already a disc trainer. but I'm looking at all these sorts of things that help us improve our leadership styles, our understandings of teams, of people, of behaviour, and DISC flow brings in the emotional intelligence aspect of it as well. Coaching skills and creating cultures of coaching within organisations is something that I'm very passionate about. I used to poo-poo the whole concept of coaching, and I fess up, I'm absolutely eating my words. I've just done my own Cert 4 and started my diploma, because I believe that through coaching, my power of working with my clients as well as leading my teams is so much better, instead of telling them what to do and leading from command and control. I'm really trying to embrace these styles of coaching and recognising the gifts and the talents inside my team, and helping sort of coach them into being really powerful in their own sort of areas, and together in terms of working with each other. So I highly recommend anyone who's managing people do some coaching. Of course, I thought I was a coach. People used to call me a coach, and as I started to learn, the skills are so much more powerful than I understood. We also offer Business Foundations course. This is very heavily subsidised through our work with Anne-Marie Cross. She's our podcasting queen. She's an absolute brilliant marketer around how to position what it is you're doing if you're actually out as a coach or as a consultant, or if you have a practice and you're trying to work out how to separate and define your service delivery and products and how to position them. I would highly recommend you tap into this. It's not an expensive course, it's a short course, but any time with Anne-Marie Cross, she's just a brilliant marketer. It's time worth spending. So if you are on social, make sure you join our LinkedIn group. Our members post in there. So if you are keen to share your articles or share your thoughts or share your events or have a promotion, what have you, make sure you join as a classic or a premium level member of Businesswomen Australia, and you can promote and share in there. Otherwise, we'd just love you to join and interact and keep on top of what's going on. We're on Facebook, Twitter, we're on Instagram, and of course, we have a company page on LinkedIn and our fabulous website. And speaking of which, we would not be able to do what we do without these amazing partners. Our website is looked after by Catco Enterprises under the guidance of Kathy Smith. All our accounts are done, and our liaison with our accountants at LG Accounting Solutions is undertaken by the team at Solo Accounts. My crew at Hawkins Marketing help us with all our strategy and getting a lot of our social media and invitations out. Intact Teams is Jessica Schubert's business. She's a fabulous executive and leadership coach. She also runs a lot of training for some of the big international global companies. And she's written a book, Lead the Future, definitely worth reading. Anne-Marie Cross, I've mentioned already, of course, our favourite 3 Drops Wine and Inspiration Source, where we have a lot of our courageous conversations. Join as a member. If you've got any questions about that, please drop me a line. I'd love to hear from you. Every little bit of membership fee helps us pour that back in to make the programs and promote them and market them and manage all the things that we do. It's a social enterprise, so any money that's made inside that business gets put back into the programs that we deliver. So we're not government funded, and we really have struggled over the last 3 years. We lost all our corporate sponsorship before COVID. Perhaps that might come back online. So if you know of any amazing companies that are keen to partner with us, I'd love to meet them. And that means we can do so much more and start offering more scholarships and things as well. So lots of things coming up. We have a very busy community. It's phenomenal. Sydney Walk and Talks are up and running with the gorgeous Joanne Keating. She's stepped up and doing these in the mornings before work around the domain. So rain or shine, if it's really, really wet, it'll be a coffee shop catch up and meeting in front of I think it's the Eye Hospital or the Eye Institute Hospital, but all the details are there if you just register through our calendar on our website, and then any updates Joanne can let you know. Melbourne, we've got Yum Cha. I think I have 1 seat left available. We decided to bring it into the private dining area. So we've got 20 amazing ladies meeting for Yum Cha on the 22nd of April. Bunbury have decided to do a walk and talk. We've got the amazing Julie Broad here today with us, and she's looking after the whole of Bunbury. And they're also on the 4th of May meeting with the makers at the Artisan Collective, which is just the most beautiful shop that Christine Sparta's set up. It's dangerous. I can't get there for that one because I'll be over in Mandurah, but in Melbourne, but it's a great shop. Rockingham Ladies Night Out, always good fun at the Peel Manor House, and of course the Sydney Walk and Talk again in May. Cheese and Chats with Vita Carlino are also happening in May, as is Speed Networking later in the month. And then 10 Questions to Ask Your Accountant. That's an in-person event in Perth. That one's actually in the Innaloo, Scarborough area. So anyone on the western suburbs will be keen to join us for that one. So that is, obviously there's some gaps in there. We would love people from Adelaide, from Brisbane, from other areas of the regional areas around Australia, from Hobart, to come on board and help us run some events locally. If you're keen and want to get involved, we would love to hear your ideas. Now, that's enough about BWA. We're all here for one amazing person, Marion Burchall. She is an absolute leader in design thinking. She's the managing director of Azolla Holdings. They're an agile strategy consulting business. She was working prior to this as a strategic director for Monitor Deloitte. She's been in acting government CIO roles, and she's been an executive director with absolute stunning credentials for the WA government, because she's known for her practical solutions to business problems, to strategy, innovation and leadership. And she works with teams and CEOs across both public and commercial sectors. And she's really got that amazing gift of bringing design and agile focus that's very customer centric into organisations that have multiple stakeholders. And I think that's really something that we'll be wanting to hear more about from her today. So I will stop my sharing. I will ask you all to pop into the chat room a little bit about yourself, what you're interested in about design strategy, while Marion brings up her slides. And please don't be shy. Make sure you do make yourself known in the chat room.
Suppose this means I need to unmute myself.
That helps. And I will mute myself now before my dog starts.
It could be a very interesting session otherwise. Thank you very much, Lyn, for that amazing introduction. I feel like you should do all of my introductions based on that blurb at the start. It certainly sells me more than what I usually sell myself. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm very excited about this topic, about the power of design-led strategy. It's a topic that I really am very interested in because essentially I started my career many years ago in strategy and policy, and I was always about co-creating, co-design, empowering people to make decisions for themselves. And really, design thinking is really key to a lot of this. And for me, I really think that people, when they come to work, really want to make a difference. We want to create something that's meaningful, that's of value, and we spend so much time at work that we really want it to mean something. So that's really why strategy is really important, because it's really about looking at where we're going and how we're going to do that. And so this session is really designed to be very interactive, so feel free to ask questions along the way, but do note that we do have some break points in the actual presentation for us to interact and to really participate in this process. So before we actually get started, I'm really keen to hear from you. So Lyn, I think we've got a little bit of a poll. Is that right?
There you go. You should be able to see that now.
This is exciting. So the first question is strategy development part of your current role? So it'll be interesting to see. We've got another question here around, do you know what your organisation's current strategy is? You'll be surprised at the number of people I know who have no idea. And why do you think so many strategies fail? We will go into a bit more detail into that one as we move along. And just so that we have an idea, have you participated in design thinking before? I saw earlier there were a few chat comments in there around people wanting to know more about design thinking, around how they can incorporate that into the work and the teams that they're working with. So we'll definitely have a look at some of that as we progress through today as well. I suppose I'm supposed to also be doing this poll too, so maybe I should just quickly do that. Just read out the questions. Let's quickly do this. Okay, there you go, Lynn. I'm done.
They're still coming in, so we've got a few more. A few more there. How are we going? Everyone's all done? Okay. All right. Okay, so a couple of people have declined by the look of it, but I will end the poll now, and you can then get the you'll then have a good feel of those results. So 85% yes, they have. Strategy development's part of their role, and there's one's unsure, 2 used to be. 77% know what their organisation's current strategy is, and 23% said no. Really interesting results there in terms of, there you go, that might help if I share. Just realising I'm reading it without sharing. There we go. There's some really interesting results there around the why strategies fail. Real mix, Marion. A really easy spread across each one of them. And of course, I think there's probably some other reasons too that add to it as well, but that's quite telling. And of course, have you participated in design thinking before? Half and half.
Great. That's really useful. Thank you everyone for participating. That really helps in terms of knowing where to pitch what we're going to talk about as well. So I'm just going to quickly go through. So it's probably useful for us to start with what is strategy and what isn't strategy. So according to the Cambridge dictionary definition, strategy is defined as a long-range plan for achieving something or reaching a goal, or the skill of making such a plan. And good strategy is more than just this, because it actually provides a clear roadmap for how you're going to achieve it. It consists of principles and rules. It defines the actions that people are going to take and not take, and things that should be prioritised or not to achieve that desired goal. It is really determining what we're going to do in the defined time frame that we're working towards as part of that strategy. And it's essentially the how to the what, the who and the why. Yet I'm sure we've all had times where we've seen mediocre strategy happen and also some really bad experiences when it comes to strategy. But hopefully we've had some really good ones as well. So interestingly enough, and I'm not sure if this is a surprise to any of you, but organisations generally fail to execute strategy according to the research. So 90% of organisations fail to execute their strategies successfully according to the balanced scorecard. 67% of well-formulated strategies fail due to poor execution according to some HBR research, good old Harvard Business Review. And on average, 50% of strategies fail execution. Now, this does have a low of 7% and a high of 90% according to some research that was done by Candido and Santos. So what's really interesting here is why. We spend all this time creating strategy, we do a lot of research and we pull it all together, and we know that strategy is really important. So why does it actually fail? So some of the reasons why strategy fail include this. Firstly, many strategies fail because they aren't actually a strategy in the first place. Real strategy involves making choices. It's a clear set of choices that define what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And this is really critical because I'm sure we've been all in these sessions where everyone wants to do everything and it all becomes a little bit chaotic. Strategies fail to be implemented because they don't represent that clear set of choices and instead are goals. So sometimes we see visions or missions be mixed up with strategy in that, for instance, we want to be number 1 or number 2 in the markets in which we operate. That's not a strategy, it's a goal, as it doesn't actually tell you what it is you're going to do. Another key reason is it's seen as a top-down process. So leaders and managers or executives get together and create the strategy, and then they basically assume that everyone in the organisation is just going to make it happen. And that through maybe telepathy or osmosis that they're actually going to know what's required and why. This is all a recipe for failure, as successful strategy requires people to participate in the process, especially those that are going to be implementing it, because people need to understand what's needed, why, and also have an understanding of how to actually do it. So in my experience, this is where most strategies fail. It's super easy to write a document. It's a lot harder to successfully implement something as there are so many pieces and our workplaces can be very complex. So another key area is around capabilities gap. Interestingly, when organisations were interviewed around the top reasons for preventing strategy implementation, 80% responded that their organisation was good at crafting strategy, but 44% were good at implementation. So there's a clear gap between developing strategy and executing strategy. There's also a direct correlation between taking on leadership roles and becoming more insular or more internally focused. So I'm sure we've all had the experience where we've received a promotion, yay, very exciting. However, with that, we tend to get focused on resolving conflicts, reconciling budgets, managing performance, dealing with the latest spot fire, and so on. Consequently, less attention is paid on strategy and strategic issues like competitive movement, like dealing with customer needs and technology trends. In fact, an HBR study suggested that 70% of leaders spend an average of 1 day per month reviewing strategy, and 85% of their teams spend less than an hour a month discussing strategy. As such, they're unable to identify their clear market, who they serve, who they won't serve, what their market advantage is based on their capabilities and so on. So what other reasons are there? There's also no communication and no buy-in from the team. Most plans fail due to poor communication between management and the team. Many organisations are challenged to effectively communicate their strategy across the whole organisation. Generally speaking, the team that created the strategy actually know what it's about, but no one else really does. A Kaplan and Norton study published in HBR showed 95% of employees did not understand their organisation's strategy or its objectives. Usually there's a strategy team that's delegated the task of developing a strategy, and because we're so busy and under pressure and dealing with spot fires, we think, the strategy team's got this. So people self-opt out of the process and implementation. There's also a lack of BAU alignment. So I'm sure many of you have had a manager that is all about the new and latest shiny object. This next slide is for you. Hopefully it will work. And we're buffering.
Twisted lies, you greasy shell that smells like own crack.
Look what I found.
Yep, that nice little shiny light that they keep trying to catch. Here's another management type.
Yeah, I'd like to place an order.
What do you like?
Yeah, I'd like 3 orders of garlic chicken.
And
Then 3 orders of white rice.
then?
And then, oh, hey, you guys want soup? Sure. Yeah, 3 orders of wonton soup.
And then?
Oh, some fortune cookies too. So I think that's about it.
And then?
That's it.
Essentially, there's the what next. So we've got this strategy, we spent all this time doing it, and then people go, well, what about this? And then, and then, and then. And so the next thing we know, we have a completely misaligned strategy because we're looking at the latest shiny object and we're trying to figure out how this is going to incorporate into what we're doing, which is not a strategy at all. It's just being chaotic. So in this, it's important to consider and acknowledge existing efforts and roles in overall strategy. This means alignment with existing programs where appropriate, and what is not being done or what should be exit out of because it's no longer relevant to what we're trying to do and it's no longer a priority. And how do we redirect those resources, focus and effort accordingly? In companies that poorly execute strategy, 60% did not link their strategies to budgets or BAU, resulting in a disconnect between their commitment and their resources. This in turn dilutes the focus of the organisation and results in overcommitting resources, and as such institutionalises mediocrity and cynicism, and essentially it sets people up to fail. There's also an unwillingness to iterate. Strategy should be a living, breathing document. It should be consistently adjusted and tweaked as assumptions are further tested and threats and opportunities are changing. So no longer can we do the set and forget strategy, and we certainly in our current environment can't wait for the 12-year strategy review either. Strategy needs to be reviewed regularly to prevent the misalignment of activity and strategy failure risks. So at this point, we're going to have one of our first sharing interactive sessions, which is focused on what your experience is in terms of strategy development. So I think, Lyn, how are we going to do this?
I'm just going to put everyone into breakout rooms, and then if they do you want them to talk about the 3 different things and then come back?
Absolutely.
So yeah.
So we'll definitely do that and chat about it amongst yourselves. When we come back, we'll have one person from each of those breakout groups provide a bit of a summary of your discussion. Just looking at the time, it's 10 minutes. Okay, Lyn?
Yep, that should be fine. So write these down. What's your experience? What didn't work? What worked well? And what would you do differently? And even if it worked well, what would you do differently to make it even better? So I'll just pop everyone into breakout rooms now. How are we going, Marion?
Yeah, so we had a really great discussion in our group. I'm sure everyone else did as well. So I would like to invite a scribe from each or report back from each group. I know Priscilla is ours, so maybe I'll start with Priscilla because I don't know who else has put their hand up. But maybe if
your hand up, and then we know that you're the scribe of each of the groups. So Priscilla can kick off first.
Sure. We had a group. We had myself as a company director, kind of sole trader looking to grow. We had Miriam as a sole trader, and Marie, who runs a SME in the ag industry. So different backgrounds and different kind of levels of strategy. So Marie and I did strategy a lot, and Miriam a little bit less so. But we talked through the importance of kind of having a process so that you can stop a lot of the noise and actually really focus in on what you need to be able to deliver. So Marie was talking through their process around, the why and what it is you're trying to achieve, and then the, setting some timelines and how you're going to achieve it. So embedding their execution with the strategy. And then she acknowledged that it was much harder to follow her own process that she does with clients for her own business, and the journey she'd been on with you as part of that, Lyn, which was great. We talked about the importance of communication, and that there can be a lot of assumed understanding and the 360s across the organisation, so that you're understanding how your strategy aligns to execution at the front end, and it doesn't matter how many times you say it, someone's heard it for the first time kind of 10 months later, and how you adjust that messaging and how important that is to get it right if your implementation is going to be right. And Miriam talked it through about the outside influences. You think you've got a strategy as a sole trader, you're working through, this is where I want my business to go, and then the external things change and shift a lot, and how do you respond to that, which Marion started to respond to, and then our time was up. Did I miss anything critical? We got the scribe message late in the piece, so some of that's memory.
Amazing. That was great. Thank you, Priscilla.
No worries. Thank you.
So I saw Freya, I think you had your hand up. Would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you. We had a great discussion. I had Julie Broad and Hugh Munro in my group, so two good, very experienced strategy people. So the first bit about what didn't work was quite interesting. A lot of it was around not enough time and not too much in the business rather than on the business, not allocating enough time to actually make things work, and no clear vision. So the board of directors or the owners just really being a bit wishy-washy about what they actually wanted to get out of the process at the end and what the key outcomes were, not just outputs. So, and then mine was more around sort of lack of buy-in. So I've seen it where the management's written the strategy, they give it to the board, the board's sort of half-hearted about it, but kind of give it a tick, move on, and don't take it as seriously as perhaps they should. And then the rest of management lower down into the business don't really buy in either. So it's it just doesn't, it sort of falls flat in those sort of circumstances. What's worked well, it's really interesting. All of us came up with sort of similar themes around collaborative vision, and also just the actual process working end to end can actually pull people together and get you all feeling like you're moving in the same direction. So it can be really motivating as well. So Julie talked about Adapt by Design framework, which is an online platform tool, which means you can actually see what's going on as it's getting designed, which really helps that buy-in. And we talked about just the fact that there's so much emphasis on collaboration. Was that a female thing, or was it just that people are so sick of lack of outcomes? So, is that, are we all just moving on anyway as businesses are like that, or is that, a female-led thing that we all sort of agreed on what the key thing is that we do? And then what we do differently is really around the process of the how. So I'm sort of asking, what do we need to do differently at the board level, for example? But it's a lot around measurement and tracking. And one of the things that I raised was around AI, and that, we're seeing that much more in, say, the HR space, so that you can track complaints, you can track word patterns, and you can actually measure what's going on. The ability to measure things in the future is something that I think will be really helpful in actually helping us understand how well our strategy is being implemented and are we on track. Did I get everything? Nikki, Julie? You're on mute, Nikki, but I think that was a yes. Good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Freya. That was fantastic. Oh, Anna, you got your hand up. Would you like to go next?
Hi, everyone. Sana here. We had a group of 4. Hi, Julie. So we had, let's look at faces. Amanda, Eleanor, and Monique were in the group. So thank you, ladies. So we did a bit of a merry dance. But what we got here in terms of what was the experience, there was a loss of interest, not sure of the market. And I think that's really something that's important. If you can't nail your market, then how are you going to be able to create a strategy in the first place? Then we looked at what has worked well. When people are focused, when they've got a vision and they can reiterate that vision, their ideas are practical, they're affordable, or their strategies are practical and affordable. You don't get emotional about it. There's good buy-in from different departments, especially when you're needing to create something. I mean, not that Noel mentioned this, but I was thinking about a housing project. You know, you need different buy-ins from different departments. Otherwise, if they're not talking, then, you know, it's all going to fall away by the wayside. Also, the importance of consistency and actually following through on the strategy, on the plan. I've just heard that some people don't follow that, even though it's in front of them. I'm guilty of that as well. But I think for me, I mean, I wear 2 hats coming on board today. One is as a business advisor in my day job, and the other one is as the founder of Courage Unravelled, and it's about mindset and keynote speaking around themes of courage. But I think we all want to be clear about our business values. What are those values? And when you've got an understanding of what those values are, then that becomes the drip feed effect for everything else. You know, how do you understand, or hopefully you understand your customer, and then you can start nailing or creating a sense of strategy around that. The other problem, I think, for sole traders is just not having the human resources. I mean, you're everything. Right, and you know, the physical restrictions that come across, sole traders, as well as the mental fatigue and the juggling of absolutely everything to be able to do what you want to do, and you can see it, but you're not able to actually potentially implement it on your own. And I think we didn't get to a point of what would you do differently. So unless anyone wants to make comment, I think that's about it from us. Anyone from the group? Any thoughts on doing it differently? No.
Yeah, I think it's also underlying mindset. I have a campaign that I like, but my mindset, there's something there underneath in my subconscious that is going, I don't know about doing this again and again and again. And they have to have that repetition, that consistency to maintain the impetus.
Thank you. Thanks, Marion.
Thank you very much. Is there one more group? There is. I'll just keep looking. Who's got their hand up and I can't see? Are you all avoiding me? Because I'm scrolling and I can't see anyone with their hand up. Oh, there we go. Sissy.
I would say something.
Go,
Samantha.
Sissy.
Yeah,
go,
do you want to do it?
No, you go, please.
I thought we completely forgot about having to report back. So we just kept on talking until the time it stopped. So I had Samantha and Shelley and Samantha and myself, 3 of us in the group. And I guess we talked about our own experiences, and some of the topics include in terms of the strategy development and in terms of implementation. So the issues to do with implementation in the everyday business, where in an SME, it's actually hard for people to basically get away and implement the strategy, where even if they have agreed to the strategy at a 2-day offsite, and agreed to it, and everyone signed off on the KPIs, etc. But as time goes by, everyday life, they're dealing with they're fighting fires every day. They're dealing with cash flow issues. Some of the strategy will just basically get pushed back. And the thing is, this to do with this issue I think Samantha was talking about is actually about prioritization as well. And in her organization, which is the health organization in WA, actually getting buy-in on the prioritization, and that sort of shining spot syndrome. So many new things come up, and more the priority gets pushed back, and you got to reprioritize, etc. So I think when Marion was talking about the strategy being a continuing document, and that is the problem in a lot of times, that strategy gets done once a year, and it then kind of goes to the bottom of the drawer. But when it actually needs to be updated and reviewed, and monthly sessions to discuss it. And actually, one of the things that I raised is about the accountability for the strategy. When you have KPIs, are they real KPIs? So they KPIs that actually people will get fired over. It's just KPIs that are fluffy, and then it just gets pushed off to the next quarter or next month, and everyone's still a bit lost on the strategy, whether they're going, actually according to their strategy or not. So, yeah. Sorry, Samantha and Shelley. What else do we discuss? Those are the things that I thought about.
Did you talk about KPIs that people get promoted on as well as fired by? But isn't it interesting what's happening with organisations at the moment, where there's chaos going on and crises, and what happens with strategy in these times, and which strategies are actually have the ability for those agile, nimble changes that need to be made within the overarching strategy.
Absolutely, Lynn. So we've talked about some of the challenges. Let's get into what we might be able to do about it. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, here we go. The power of design-led strategy. All right, so we've talked about some of the issues, and just bear this in mind as we work through this, because I think that list was fantastic, and hopefully this will address some of the challenges and issues that you have identified along your strategy journey. So how do we improve the odds of good, meaningful and impactful and pragmatic strategy? Enter the rise of design-led strategy. So as many of you know, human-centered design thinking or design thinking was very much born from the manufacturing sector and from the technology sector. And it can be very focused in its purest sense in terms of the minutiae of designing a new platform or a specific customer journey. However, we have found that there's this really awesome sweet spot around combining design thinking with strategy development. So around 50% of you said that you were aware of design thinking and what it was. So I'll just run through quickly what it actually is for the other 50%. So according to IDEO, who are the internationally forefront people of design, it is, in effect, this. It's a process, a mindset, an approach to solving complex problems. It's really based on a philosophy that empowers the individual or the team to design products, services, systems, and experiences that address the core needs of those who experience a problem. And in effect, it doesn't matter what sector you work in, be it the corporate sector, not-for-profit sector, government sector. We're all about solving problems and adding value, and that's really at the heart of what we do. So it all starts with changing the mindset of people. I heard someone say mindset in the feedback session, and changing the perspective on what it is we're solving for and what the actual opportunity is. So changing mindset. Don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of Dead Poets Society, so I absolutely had to play this for you.
Why do I stand up here? Anybody?
To feel taller.
No. Thank you for playing, Mr. Dalton. I stand upon my desk to remind myself that we must constantly look at things in a different way. See, the world looks very different from up here. You don't believe me? Come see for yourselves. Come on. Come on. Just when you think you know something, you have to look at it in another way, even though it may seem silly or wrong. You try. Now, when you read, don't just consider.
So I don't know about you, but I know that when Dead Poets Society came out, it actually had a profound impact on my life and the way I live. And it's probably one of my top 5 greatest movies of all time. And so essentially it really is about changing perspective, getting people to stand on that desk and looking at the same issue or problem from a different way. And that essentially is what design thinking does. It is a 5-step process. These are the steps in case you didn't know what they were. So empathizing is really around, what is the experience of the end user or the customer? And that can be internal or external. What does that actually look like? And defining what those challenges or problems are. There's a whole process around this, obviously, and we're not going to go through that today. Ideating what those potential solutions are. So one of the things that I love about it is it flips the challenges and problems into what is actually possible. What is the opportunity? How could we do something different? And then how do we actually just kind of get going? What would it actually look like in real life? Pragmatically speaking, how would it work? And then actually going and testing to see if it does work in that way. So it becomes iterative. It allows us to understand if our solution is actually going to be feasible, desirable, and affordable. And it's born out of a desire to improve the experience. And that is the things that I love about this particular process. So why does it actually work? Well, for a start, it helps to provide a really good understanding of the problem. To have a good strategy, we need to have a good understanding of what it is we actually are doing. What's the value we're creating and what are the solutions or problems we're trying to actually deliver solutions for? And this is where design thinking comes into play. Because the first step is really about understanding from a customer's point of view, again, be that internally or externally, what it is that the product or service that is being delivered is, and what are some of those problems? What is it from their experience? So it's getting on that desk and looking at it from a different perspective, because we all know what our experience is and we all know what the team says, because I'm sure the corridor chat elicits that, but we don't actually necessarily know from our customer's point of view what that actually looks like. And as part of this process, there's also a research phase around horizon scanning as well. So what are things that are coming up that could impact the business and perhaps create opportunities for us to do things differently? And this step can actually be quite confronting for people as it challenges the status quo. And as many of you probably know, the status quo is very powerful. And at this stage, it's really important for people to suspend their beliefs, their ideas and opinions, and their natural instinct to defend what it is that they actually do. The process also creates buy-in and capability building. So I heard some of you say earlier that it's really important to get buy-in, and that this is one of the reasons why strategy has failed in the past. One of the strengths of design-led strategy is it's organic and it's inclusive, in that it creates shared ownership. The processes encourage participants to actively engage with people, to test their assumptions, their thinking, and seek the views and experiences of others. The shared ownership spreads accountability across the organisation. It creates leadership growth opportunities for people, and it allows the organisation to maximise and leverage their human capital. So a lot of times we hear about diversity and the importance of diversity. It's very hard. Design-led strategy actually empowers and creates the environment for that to occur. It also considers who is the most suitable person for this particular, who is most suited to drive this particular objective. So that's not necessarily going to be a manager or someone in a senior position, but it's more about who has the experience and the passion to push the limits of what's possible. So it's really about now getting into the organisation, and it encourages people to be part of the process, so strategy isn't developed behind closed doors. Communication isn't just about people knowing the strategy, but it's about buying into the strategy. And so it's important for people to hear about it, not when it's finished, but to actually feel valued, their voice is heard, and they're part of that process. Design thinking also creates alignment and new ways of organising resources as well. So it creates a cascade of goals, reforms, or initiatives, resources, capabilities and accountabilities, as well as ways to measure the success. So we heard a little bit about that earlier as well, around things that have worked really well. It also challenges the old organisational design and way of working by making it contemporary, by creating systemic alignment of capabilities, processes, governance, culture, competencies and technology, and builds them into the organisational machine. And it focuses on actually delivering the strategy. And in fact, those companies that successfully implemented their strategy, 77% of them did it this way. It also helps to include the alignment of BAU as well, where appropriate, to show how it's going to help in terms of delivering greater efficiency, greater effectiveness, but also pivoting the thinking of the delivery as well and refocusing that effort. And it's also pragmatic in terms of the solutions that are built. And so I think someone said earlier, I think it was Marie in our group discussion, said that it's really around creating the strategy with implementation as well. So one eye on strategy development, the other on how it's going to be implemented. And so that helps to overcome the general lack of intentionality in strategy execution that results in implementation failure. And it does this through the whole iteration component. So how do we actually get started quickly, small, lean, build? How do we simplify that process? How do we get it tested in a cheap, easy, quick way to test if it's going to be achievable, consistent, timely and feasible, and that it meets the desires of the customers that we're looking at designing for. It designs for customer first, which we talked about earlier, be that internal or external. And it's an iterative process. So we look at those solutions and we test, and then in an agile way and approach, look at how we might pivot based on the type of feedback that we're getting back. And in doing so, it helps to build that momentum in an organisation. It helps to inculcate a culture of innovation and of managing risk as well. So what's an example of this? So this is one of our clients, and we know that this methodology works because our clients are telling us that this is the case. these are the results of just one client in 1 year alone. And essentially, they had a massive savings to local businesses in their community. The contribution to WA's economy was significant. This is during COVID, by the way. So this wasn't pre-COVID or anything like that. This is during COVID. There were a number of jobs created as well. There was a reduction time in the application time. So this is like a statutory function. And also a significant number of hours were saved, which then meant that people could actually be focused on creating new reforms and initiatives that will actually add value. But these are just the quantified data. Now let's look at what the qualitative data is telling us. So people are telling us things like, this will literally change my life. They're also telling us we didn't actually understand what this process was going to be, and we thought it might have been a waste of time. But now that we've been through it, we can actually see the value. We can see how we're going to make a difference, not just to our clients, but also to ourselves as well, because they saw it being very frustrating for everyone. They thought they had a great idea and a great handle on what the actual problem was, but going through a design process in their strategy development made them realise that they actually didn't know what the actual problem was. And so it was a really great way for them to test their assumptions and their beliefs, because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, and you only come at something from a particular perspective. And the other thing that we're also seeing is that it helps to break down the silos across an organisation. Inherently in design-led strategy, you map out the entire journey a person has. And in doing so, you actually get to see where those touch points are in the process and what's problematic and what those pain points are. And that allows people to go, hang on, how can we actually improve this and make it better so that our clients aren't getting frustrated and we're not getting frustrated, and that there's a greater focus on the efficiency of how we allocate our resourcing and capabilities so that we can make the process better for everyone. And so that's really awesome. We also see an improvement in communication across the whole business because people are getting connected. So now it's not just the strategy team that's required to implement, but there's a leveraging across the organisation, and multidisciplinary teams get formed to actually deliver different components of the strategy, because together they've actually created that strategy and know from a holistic point of view where they should be going and how that can practically be delivered. It lifts capabilities in implementation planning, innovation, agile thinking, and also risk management as well. And we know that these are key issues in organisations. Through the work that we do, these are the type of capabilities that are needing to be lifted in organisations, and they're ones that do actually need to be built. So there's a bit of a capability gap that we're seeing in those particular areas. And we're seeing that those relationships across people are more productive. Interestingly, there's also a better workplace culture that results through the use of design thinking in the development of strategy and its implementation as well. And according to Forbes, these attributes are consistent with creating a positive workplace culture, which essentially focuses on improving teamwork, raising morale, increasing productivity and efficiency, and enhancing retention in the workplace. Job satisfaction, collaboration, and workforce performance are all enhanced. And it also reduces the stress of employees because they now feel a sense of knowing what it is they're doing and a sense of the value that they're bringing to people's lives. And it achieves this through fostering collaboration and communication by creating an environment around teamwork, around collaboration, around open and honest communication, and involving people at every step of the way, which is amazing, and eliciting their input. So it's not just informing, but it's how can people actively participate in this process. It also creates an inclusive work environment where employees are valued, supported, and nurtured, irrespective of their position, their role, and their length of employment, because their voice is actually valued and heard in that process. And it sets clear goals as well. So it results in motivated and engaged employees because they have a voice and are genuinely empowered and heard through this process, and they know what those goals are. So I am now going to go back to you, and we're going to have a bit of a reflection piece. So I'm just also conscious of time as well. So Lyn, if we're able to break people into groups again, where we can talk about what's been your experience in design thinking, how might this work in your organisation, and what would the barriers be to adopting this approach? Then we'll do the same. We'll have a quick conversation around that, come back, share your thoughts, and then we'll look at wrapping up. So Lyn, what do you reckon? 8 minutes?
Yeah, what about 8 minutes, everyone? I've mixed you up again so that you get to meet with some different ladies as well, because a part of what we're all about is connecting you all to each other and making sure you all meet. So what has been your experience with design thinking? How might this work in your organisation or with your clients, perhaps if you're in a consulting role, and what would be the barriers to adopting this approach? So I'll put you into breakout rooms now.
Thanks, Lyn.
Marion, over to you. Okay, who was one of the first groups that want to share?
Amanda's got her hand up, so we'll go Amanda, then Marie.
Okay, so we had Sana and Freya and chatted about our experience, which was a feeling that we've been doing this kind of design-led thinking, but not really knowing that that's what we were doing. Some of the actual experience I've had working with organisations was more so in the project delivery side of the design-led process rather than the strategy, and because obviously my manager was sort of working more in the strategy. But then once I started breaking it down, remembered that it starts with really defining the problem, and that's sort of how it works is making sure that you're looking at that empathize stage, looking at the problem, whether it's an internal or external problem, and then using the approach to ensure everyone's on the same page, that everyone's in alignment with what the drivers are for the strategy, and ensuring that there's like collaboration across multiple levels. And the things that might be barriers is not getting buy-in on even what the problem is. And that, you know, if there's not acknowledgement that there's a need for change or a need for a strategy, then that might be a barrier. Not using data that's quantifiable, qualitative, to really define the project, and then use that outputs as you're building the scenario to create the ideas and the prototypes in the strategy. So it's a really interesting workshop, this one, to look at my experience and sort of reflect on what I actually learned from that, as well as hear from others and also new ways of looking at it.
Great, thank you, Amanda. Marie. Marie, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm not used to doing this on my phone. Beg your pardon. Thank you to Julie Broad, Nikki Munro, and Samantha Franke. It was really interesting. Some of us have had experience and some of us haven't. So some are here learning, and I think we can all learn one or two things from this. I've had similar experiences, but not following the particular exact process, which was interesting. Samantha shared quite a detailed experience of starting by listening, so really connecting with the empathy of the organisation, addressing any pain points, so following the process really well, building it and building it and building it, and getting the buy-in of everybody. Taking time was interesting, where what was going to be a 6-month process became a 9-month process, and now 12 months later it's about to be implemented, and then how to actually make that work as well has been very interesting. But the time it takes, and I think we all fall short sometimes of acknowledging that it's going to take time to get everybody on the bus as much as anything, as well as the same thing. The buy-in is very, very good because it's taken that time. From the board, the staff, the customers, everybody knows how and why it's going to happen. So, and I said to Samantha that I'd love to hear in 12 months or 18 months' time how you've gone, because what I've found is when people are really focused and organisations are focused, they achieve way more than they ever thought possible in a much, much shorter time frame. So watch this space. Sam, no pressure. Maybe you can run one of these. The barriers we noted were time and timing sometimes. Interestingly, Julie mentioned having an external consultant that came in and did an amazing job and was an amazing person, and then left with the design of the strategy, and then there was no one that had maybe the skills or the champion to implement and follow it through. So it's going to be very important to upskill everyone in the organisation so that you can hand the baton and someone can actually make it happen. And it takes time to understand the process. It is a great process, but for those of us that are new to this kind of design thinking or strategy situation, it's going to take us some time to understand the process, and that was coming from someone fairly new to this kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Now, who else? Looking for hands. Don't see any hands. I'm going to pick on Priscilla because we decided, Priscilla, that you were going to report back from our team. That was an Amanda. Yes, you. Amanda and I decided.
I thought I got it this time because anyway, we talked about people understanding the process and how it would create value. So I don't, Shelley, might you want to add in here, but talked about a lot of the Indigenous communities that you work with and organisations, and how you kind of represent the value of what this process can bring. So how do you frame the business case to even get them to start to go down the path? It was kind of my takeaway of what you were describing, but I might have summarised that really poorly, Shelley, so please feel free to jump in. Otherwise, the conversation was quite similar, really. It was timing, timeliness, the busyness of people, and we talked about getting people to actually stay with the problem for longer, that there's a real kind of want to leap into the solution. We found a solution, it's great, everyone's energised, and that's where they want to jump, and trying to hold that gate for longer can be really hard. I think they were the kind of core elements. And then Marion was responding to that timely conversation around it can take a long time to do this well, but there's lots of ways of framing it up and kind of converting people to the process by doing something short and sharp, giving them a taste, looking at a wicked problem, helping them understand what this can do for them. So never be afraid to kind of chunk it down and look at ways to get people on board, without kind of it needing to be the kind of gold-plated journey that that can lead to conversion quicker. Feel free to add anything I missed, Marion and Shelley.
I thought that was a great summary.
Yeah, great summary.
Am I missing someone? Am I missing one group to report back?
I'll speak. the hesitation is because we are all sole traders. And so to talk in that big picture was a little bit harder. Mariam shared that she had worked with a big group and found that very difficult in some ways to coordinate an event. And so we got onto the topic of communication, and the work that I've done again and again, the communication has come up as the most important one. And Marion explored that concept of getting buy-in. So whether that buy-in is as a sole trader to find what really understand the needs of the people within the organization, or whether it's really understanding your niche. Again, we've come back to the same thing. It's very important to be able to listen and understand. But we didn't really have that process to work through as sole traders.
No worries. Thank you very much for making those comments. All right, so I'm just conscious of time, so I'm just going to pull all of this together. So in short, design thinking focuses on people and not process. And that is really where its power is, because people will decide if a strategy is successful. People decide if there's value in the strategy. They decide whether to implement it. They decide whether to buy into it. And they decide whether they make the time to actually make the changes that are required. It's also their capabilities and their understanding that determine whether it's implemented as well. And this is a key thing that gets missed in many strategies that are developed, and it's especially why strategies fail. Yet it's the single most important component for any strategy success. People. And design thinking is exactly about people. It involves them in every step of the way. It builds a greater understanding of the problem and the potential solutions and opportunities that are there. It builds capability in implementation planning, innovation and managing risk, and also how things are going to be implemented. And it unleashes the diversity and talent within an organisation and creates motivated, engaged and driven people. And it also, most importantly, helps solve customer problems, creating value, which creates sustainability in your business, be that government, corporate, not-for-profit. So essentially, that is what design-led strategy is about. So I wish you all the best in making it purposeful, impactful, and most importantly, successful. If you have any questions or further reflections, feel free to reach out to me. Let me show you how to do that. That's me. So feel free to email me or phone me because, very happy to take any of your questions or thoughts. And I am now going to hand over to Lyn for wrap up.
Thank you so much, Marion. And we have lost a few people, had to race off as we do. We have back-to-back meetings in our lives quite often. But for those of you, I think we have had a request for any references, any good books, any good studies. If you have got any, feel free to pop them in the chat box, or Marion and I will actually share some of the studies and the books that we use as references too in terms of the work that we do. It's been wonderful to have this diverse group on today, incredible female leaders from all sorts of different sectors, different professions and different parts and different states in Australia. So it's really a powerhouse of women that always come online, and in our events I'm always amazed at the eclectic group that we always seem to attract, always different people. So thank you so much for your contribution. This is how we make change. This is how we impact on our own communities, our own organisations and the people that we work with, is by really gleaning these kind of ideas and thoughts and continuing to grow and change. As a strategist and as a marketer, I'm always very excited about design-led strategy because it puts the product and the people back into what I believe is marketing. And I think a lot of people forget that marketing was originally around solving problems and being customer centric and having a product development process and design-led thinking brings that power back into making products more meaningful. And whether that's a product or a service, it really holds true. And one of the most exciting experiences I ever had was with a client who spent a lot of time actually training the whole organisation how to work as a team, how to listen to each other, how to actually understand the vision and the mission of the organisation, and then be involved in strategy through teaching them across the whole organisation how to look at a process with the customer, internal and external of the process. And it was a very powerful way of shifting a whole organisation to be customer centric and collaborative in the way that we solved problems. It's something that can be done. And it's a continuous process of improvement. And this is very exciting to have women like Marion around to be able to tap into her experiences that are constantly adding to this body of knowledge that we have. So thank you so much, Marion. It's just been an absolute joy as always. Any time we spend with you is time very well spent. So thank you so much for giving up a couple of hours of your day, and in the prep and all our chats leading up to this, it's just been an incredible gift to us. You're a very, very much in demand woman, and we are so, so grateful to have your time, as we are grateful to have the time of everyone else on the group. So many of you volunteer to facilitate our breakout sessions, and I really appreciate the roles that you play in doing that with us. You're our unsung heroes that keep popping in and helping us make these kind of sessions really slick and really well done. And I hope you've all enjoyed it today, and we'll see more of you in the future. If you've got ideas for content topics, you know where to find me, Lyn at businesswomenaustralia.com.au.
Thank
See
you
later, everyone.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you. Well done.
Thanks, Marion.
Fabulous.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, gorgeous Amanda. See you, Marion.